For most fighters, a nickname like Bazooka is a lot to live up to. For a KO specialist like Wilfredo Gomez, Bazooka may have been an understatement. Wilfredo Hydrogen Bomb Gomez may have been more accurate. Regarded as possibly the greatest Puerto Rican boxer of all time, Gomez was a 3-time world champion with 42 KOs out of 44 wins. An absolutely astounding 95% KO rate. He shares a tie with Deontay Wilder for the 3rd longest KO streak in boxing history, with 32 in a row. The 32nd was against legendary boxer Zarate, who was 55-0 at the time with 54 knockouts. But as dominant as Gomez was, he was far from a frontrunner set up for success. He earned his wins by fighting through adversity. His first world title victory came after he rallied back from a first-round knockdown. His wars against the likes of Rocky Lockridge, the aforementioned Carlos Zarate, and the legendary Salvador Sanchez are infamous for their spectacular actions. And to top it all off, he defended his super bantamweight title with 17 consecutive knockouts. A record that no one has matched since, regardless of weight class. He was a master of the sweet science, so that he could wish his competitor sweet dreams. With such explosive knockout power in both hands, what was his incredible secret to pulling off what no other man could or has since? Well, would you believe me if I said his jab? Let's take a look. It all started with the way that Gomez held his lead hand in his guard, halfway between a typical guard and the extension of a jab. Though he maybe didn't get as much power as he could have this way, his jab was always halfway to the target. And he could paw to the head and body at a moment's notice, keeping them occupied and distracted at all times. Plus, with his hand low and at a distance, his glove never blocked his vision. This kept him apprised of possible threats. And more importantly, allowed him to scope out his opponent's reaction to his pawing jabs and feints. Once he knew what the reaction was, he could capitalize. And this semi-long guard helped with the hook too. Gomez built off his jab with a unique, but terrifyingly powerful hook. The hook was a sneaky one, in that Gomez didn't turn it over in a textbook way. Instead, he hurled his hook to the target by straightening his arm first, and, judging by how it sent opponents to the deck, it didn't seem to make a difference. When Gomez extended his arm, opponents were conditioned to expect a jab, so they would try to parry or guard the middle lane, opening themselves up to Gomez's stout hook from the side. And because Gomez didn't just extend his lead hand, but tended to keep it much lower than his shoulder, it was difficult for competitors to tell if he was throwing to the jaw or the liver. But as good as Gomez was with his lead hand, it wasn't his specialty. He also had a hell of a right hand, and he had multiple tricks for setting that up. Like the rest of his style, the foundation behind his terrific rights was the jab. If Gomez could connect with his jab, he would stick it on his opponents like a glue trap. He was essentially pinning and lining up his target like a nail, holding them in place before hammering them into the canvas. This not only helped him feel the target, but it also obscured the opponent's vision just long enough for Gomez's right-hand missile to reach his target. But I know what you're probably thinking. There are downsides to everything. Wouldn't Gomez's lead hand tactics leave a gaping hole in his defenses? After all, with his lead hand constantly low or extended, he'd be wide open to right-hand attacks. Other boxers might have baited counters with this tactic, but Gomez was built different. Since he was constantly pressuring opponents to the ropes, he had plenty of room to simply take a step back if opponents tried to exploit his open left side. Of course, some foolhardy, aggressive fighters tried to take advantage of this and pressure Gomez to the ropes or smother him at close range. And that's when Gomez proved he was not so one-dimensional as they thought. When opponents tried to get close and personal, Gomez stepped into a wide, forward-facing stance, from which he could show off his excellent lateral footwork and next-level head movement, leaving opponents splitting the air. These make great highlight reels by themselves, and missing so many punches no doubt demoralized his opponents. Weaving and stepping off angle, he would make opponents miss and then counter with a much harder punch. The way he could maneuver around shots and then punish his foe is something to behold. He also liked to turn opponents and spin them to the ropes as he did so, just like his good friend, Roberto Duran, often did. But some people are rude and refuse to simply run away from Gomez like he wanted them to. So, if they kept pressing in hard or attempting to clinch and slow down the action, Gomez would shoe-shine the body like Sugar Ray Robinson. It seems basic, but it's a somewhat lost art in modern boxing, which is a shame for a couple of reasons. Primarily because it's effective, but also because it just looks so cool. By blasting their midsection with punches, Gomez made opponents choose between securing the clinch or keeping their ribs intact. Usually, they'd try to protect their body, which would open up routes for Gomez to slam hooks and uppercuts to the head. That being said, most competitors were too busy running away for this to be a factor. The Puerto Rican's lateral movement gave him the space he needed to punch most of the time, and his incredible footwork wasn't just for defense. He had some of the best offensive footwork of all time. If you've been following this channel for any length of time, you know how much I love footwork. I literally wrote the book on it. But compulsive nerdiness aside, I have to say that Gomez had some of my absolute favorite footwork. At times, he looks like a toned-down version of Prince Nassim, shuffling his feet and momentarily crossing his boots before sailing punches into overwhelmed opposition. Gomez loved to step off angle, usually to the right, to force his competitors out of alignment. This lined up his left to cut through their guard, and also concealed and positioned his right hand, which would launch from an angle the opponent couldn't see. But it's a bad fighter that can only move in one direction. Stepping to his left, Gomez would move in very, very deep, closing the gap between his lead foot and the opponent's rear foot before pivoting. This squared up the opposition for harsh shots, giving his competitor and Gomez himself no place to run or hide. It's like a Wild West showdown at high noon, but one opponent is standing sideways so they're less likely to get shot, while the other is squared up and completely open. Gomez's style is a fascinating example of both simple and highly complex tactics. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot of rhyme and reason behind when he chose simple and when he chose complex. He mastered everything from bread and butter techniques to complex flourishes that left opponents spellbound and unconscious. It's common for flashy fighters to get picked apart by basic techniques, like Nassim versus Barrera. At the same time, simple fighters can get tricked and run out of options, which we've seen before a million times. Gomez didn't have to choose. He chose based on the current situation and opponent, from moment to moment. He was smart. He was fast. He hit hard. He was a walking bazooka and one of the greatest boxers to ever live.
A lot of heart.
If you'd like to learn more, you can check out my technique books, linked below. From the Modern Martial Artist, this has been David Christian, wishing you happy training.